Hello again, fellow audiophiles. I am Wave Theory, and I am back to do my transportable audio setup part 2 and review the Chord Hugo 2 mobile DAC amplifier that I used to power what I reviewed in part 1, which was my Focal Radiance headphone. Right, and I mentioned in that review that I used the Hugo 2. Now, before I get too much further, I am out in the sunroom of my house where I frequently use this gear, and I thought it would be cool to review this gear in the space where I use it most. Now, that has provided some challenges. For one, the windows are open, so you might hear the wind rustling or some birds chirping, or a neighbor using a lawnmower, or the stray airplane flying overhead, or something like that. Also, the sun has been chasing me, so you see that I'm in a little bit different position than I was. So hopefully I can get this filmed before the sun hits me right in the face again. So anyway, I will also say please like and subscribe to my channel if you like what you have seen so far and you want me to keep doing this, so please support me that way. Alright, the Chord 2 mobile DAC amplifier. I got a really good deal on this thing and did a written review for it back in April, I want to say, April of 2021. It's now late September 2021. And so I will link to my written review there down below, so please check that out if you want more detail on this thing. And so in this review, like this video review at least, I probably will give some updated thoughts on here. I go over the ergonomics and the inputs and the outputs and how to use this thing in the written review, so I'm not going to go over that a whole lot anymore, other than let's talk about the sound. Now, I mentioned in my Radiance review that I did just a few minutes ago that I kept the Radiance because of how well it paired with the Hugo 2. And so that's kind of point number one about this, is that this thing, it can sound really wonderful, and I'll get to its strengths here in a moment when it's paired well. But it does need to be paired well. I think this does pretty good for a wide range of IEMs, particularly higher end IEMs. Now, I'm not really an IEM user, they don't work well for me, but this will drive IEMs really well. Okay, I imagine a lot of them. Where it does get picky is with full-size headphones. Now, it does have a fair amount of power. Like, it seems to handle a lot of high impedance headphones well. Like my Sennheiser HD6XX from Massdrop sounds pretty good off of this. But my Beyerdynamic DT8 8600 ohms, this does not have the juice for. Okay, so high Zs, as long as they're not crazy high Z, okay, will sound pretty good on this. It's in the lower impedances where things can get a little sketchy. So obviously I like my Focal Radiance on this, and I think that sounds great. And the Focals that I have tried, like I've also tried the Clear MG and the Stellia on here, and they also sound pretty good, although not quite as good as this one, I think, on this particular beast anyway. The Odyssey LCD2 pre-phaser sounds really good on here. But where I started to notice some issues is like my my TH900s, my Fostex TH900s that I put Lawton cups on, don't sound so great on here. My Hi-Fiman HE1000 V2 doesn't sound so great on here. So there are some out there who say that this gives you, like, you can take this to a headphone show and it'll give you a really good idea of what all headphones sound like. I don't know that I can personally endorse that claim because I think it is a little bit picky on headphones, particularly in the lower impedances and with planars in the lower end, in the bass frequencies and all that. I don't think that it has the juice to push all of those headphones, particularly those that aren't very sensitive, in the lower end. So I think it ends up sounding a little thin and bright in the signature as compared to, say, many desktop amps and all of that. Now, I don't expect this to be as powerful as a desktop amp, even though it does have a fair amount of kick to it in its output. Okay, even so, it's hit or miss, I think. And so again, high Zs, as long as they're not crazy high Z, like 250 ohm, 300 ohm probably sound really good on this. 600 ohm is too much for this. Some planars do okay, others not. So again, I don't think you can just pair this with any headphone. Focals do well, all that. Okay, getting a little repetitive there. So moving on to the other aspect of this. Like, once you get this thing paired well, what do you get? You get a really incisive neutral signature. lots of detail retrieval. It sounds very technical. Like it pulls out a lot of subtle things. Now, this can be a double-edged sword. Some people think that the detail retrieval on this sounds a little bit artificial and forced, and I can see that. There are some headphones, I think, or some amplifiers, because you can use this in a desktop setting too, because it has RCA outputs here and all that. So you can connect this to an outboard amp if you want to and use it as just a DAC, and it works fine. I do that a fair amount. If you connect it to a really revealing, I hesitate to say analytical, but a really forward amp, like I tried this on the head amp GSX Mini. So if you have like one of those head amps which is just a little bit brighter, a little bit more forward, a little bit more aggressive in its detail retrieval, you put this on there and you can double down on that kind of sound, and it can be a little bit too much. Pair this with something warmer, like if you're talking about an amplifier. This sounds great through my KN-HA1A Mark II tube amp. It sounds great through my Vielectric HPA V281 desktop headphone amplifier. I think it pairs well with things that are warmer and smoother and a little bit more relaxed, because this, again, is incisive and detailed and highly resolving and pulls out a lot of stuff. It can be a little bit overwhelming, can sometimes be just a little bit too much. One of the reasons I think it pairs really well with the Radiance is because the Radiance, as I said in my review, it has a warmer, bassier, a little bit thicker sound overall. And so the incisiveness of this one is balanced out by like the smoothness and warmth of this, and it creates a really kind of a marriage of almost best of both worlds kind of thing, and works really well together. Now, another thing at the Hugo 2 we need to talk about there is it can sound a little bit lean. And now I don't necessarily mean bass lean, although on many headphones and all that, there will be a bit of a roll-off below 40-50 hertz, some of that, because again, I think the power issue and all that. But also, like in my written review, I compared this to the Hollow Spring 2, and like the Spring 2 had more sub-bass presence, but this had a little bit more bass punch to it. But when I say lean here, I don't necessarily mean frequency response lean. It's tonally lean sometimes. Like the tones that exist, like a cello or something like that, or the lower registers of a piano, when like the bow drags across the string of the cello, or you hit one of the lower notes on the piano, the tone doesn't always have, say, the meat on its bones that other DACs at the price point, like I just mentioned the Hollow Spring 2, like the Hollow Spring 2 would have, or even though it's twice as expensive, my Berkeley Audio Design's Alpha S2 DAC, like similarly incisively neutral signature, but a little bit more fleshed out at the same time. So, and I understand that's kind of part of the Chord signature, is that they are a little bit tonally lean, okay? But, I mean, outside of that, if you like that, if you like the fact that it sounds like maybe a little bit more detailed than it otherwise would have because of that sound, then great, nothing to worry about. I don't hate it most of the time, but I definitely notice it with more incisive and detail-forward headphones or amps or that sort of thing, which is why when I use this, balance it out with a warmer, smoother headphone, or run it through a warmer, smoother amplifier like many tube amps or like a Vielectric kind of amp, or even many shit amps that are not the that are not the Magnius would probably be a good amp pairing with that too. So anyway, if you can handle some of the persnicketyness of this thing, let's call it, and you match it with the right things, it can sound really wonderful. Good punch, great detail retrieval, good imaging and separation, good staging, all of that kind of stuff. Pulls a lot out of the music, has pretty good timbre to go along with all of that. But again, you got to pair it with the right things. So if you're willing to do that, definitely is one of the most resolving and best sounding transportable options out there right now, even though it's getting a little bit long in the tooth. I think it is one of the best transportable options out there once you're willing to pair it with the right stuff. All right, so those are some of my thoughts on the Hugo 2. I really like it. I will keep it for my own transportable use with my setup here for a good while, I think. And so, yeah, I am Wave Theory. I have been reviewing sound gear in written form on Headphone and Hi-Fi Guides forum for a little over a year. New to the YouTube thing, so if you like what you see, please like, subscribe to my channel, and do all of those things. And until next time, I am Wave Theory. Enjoy the music.